Let's queer up entertainment. Will Ferrell supports his trans friend after she came out with a film. When Will Ferrell's close friend of 3 decades, Harper Steele, revealed her transgender identity, the actor admitted to having zero knowledge about the community. So to understand her journey and transformation and to be a better friend to Steele, they decided to process this chapter of their friendship together. They collaborated to create a documentary to chronicle their journey of understanding. Ferrell and Harper Steele met during their time on Saturday Night Live, for which Steele was a writer from 1995 to 2008. Steele came out as transgender in 2022, which was initially surprising to Ferrell, as he admits he had encountered trans individuals before, but none had been a part of his personal life. This was uncharted territory for him, and that's why he finds this film so thrilling. So in order to bridge the knowledge gap, they embarked on a road trip across the United States, documenting their evolving relationship in the upcoming film, Will and Harper. Ferrell expressed the documentary's purpose as offering a glimpse into the coming out and transitioning process, aiming to foster understanding for cisgender individuals with transgender loved ones. Will and Harper is currently seeking distribution beyond Sundance with no confirmed release date. We hope Will and Harper becomes available for all of us to watch very soon. So I think this is a really interesting film because I feel like a lot of like trans films focus on like the transitioning aspect, but not in like the actual like acceptance of the people like around us, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think like exploring how somebody were to get to like absolutely not knowing anything about trans people to like embracing another trans person and like understanding their experience and going through that experience with them is a really important thing to highlight. And I think it's also interesting because I've also had friends that have gone through my transition with me. So, I mean, obviously I'm still like in the process of like transitioning. I'm not done yet, but it was interesting to kind of go through that process and be like, hey, like, I'm trans. Yeah. And them being like, oh, wow, I think I have to like start thinking about things in a different way. Mm-hmm. You know, I have to start like, and it's not to say that like our friendship is completely different or anything, like it's still the same, but it's to say that there's a lot of learning that they need to be like that needs to be done and that they need to do. And that's why I think this film is like so interesting, and I really hope that I can watch it.
Yeah, I hope we can watch it too. I'm sure it'll get distribution somewhere, and we will definitely be keeping an eye on that. And not to, as I mentioned earlier, you're a resident young person today, so not to minimize or invalidate any of your experiences, but I do want to talk about yours because you are older. Have you had a similar experience like Will has? Someone who knew you before you began transitioning, but then you said you were roller skating up and down the West Side as a kid in the 90s. So
yeah, I came out in my early 20s and started my transition. But the thing that I love about these kind of movies is that it's a perfect example of how, you know, like the more people see the trans story that are in the straight and cisgender community, the more they understand, you know, the power of what we go through, and it's not a choice, you know. It's like, and it's the power of media, you know, like the more people see us, the more we'll be accepted. That's why it's so important to have trans representation on television and film in every stage of the transition. People who are our trans elders, and also, you know, people that are just starting their transition. Once you get to understand that journey, it's less threatening for the greater community, not our community, you know, the human community. So I think that's important. But when I first started my transition in the 90s, there were no, you know, places you could go. There was no hospitals. There was no doctors. There was black market hormones. There was, you know, hearing word of mouth, finding the right electrolysis that only the certain girl, like if you know, they only did the girls. And so you couldn't kind of traverse the world like it is now. Like we had to rely on each other and figure out how to transition in our community. And we were a really close-knit community then, because we needed each other to survive.
Well, it just shows how many different elements of the LGBTQ community there are, and the fact that this idea of building a community around you. It reminds me to some degree when I think about some of the drag kings and drag queens in the 1950s and 60s, and the sense that that community was a very small community, and they really had to learn from the mother within the group and from the individuals within that group. And I just hope that, today younger people can find that community of elders who can, and peers who can talk to them about different aspects, because we're all raised as different individuals, and there are certain amount of things that we're taught based upon the gender which is believed to be at the time that someone's raised. And so I think it's really important for be able to transition a lot of that stuff and to just deal with other queer individuals who can help balance this out.
That's actually interesting that you mentioned like elder mentors, because I actually do have an elder mentor. She's not trans, she's a cisgender lesbian. But I kind of went through my transition with her as well. And it was interesting to kind of go through it with her, because like not only was I discovering things about myself, but she was discovering things about herself too through my transition, which I thought was like fascinating. Because like I think that sometimes cis people like live in a world of like, like, yeah, this is like the way, this is like how it's always been. And then when they encounter another trans person and they literally like start hearing about our experiences and our stories and stuff like that, and they're like, wait a minute, I think this happened to me, and wait, how about this? And like they start piecing things together, and it expands upon their cisgender identity.
Sure.
And it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's an exchange.
Yeah.
Come on, Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that it'll go on Netflix or something, because
Absolutely.
it should be something that you can watch again and again. It's an educational piece of artwork.
Yeah.
And I think, and more importantly, going back to finding community, that trans people, trans youth can, use the internet to find community, just like LGBTQ people of all stripes tried to do that when the internet sprung up in the late 90s.
Yeah.
I mean, AOL, anyone remember those? But oh God. But the thing is, and that's why the social media bill that we discussed in the breaking story is so insidious. This is how they take away your community, by basically taking away the way that you can become a community.
Oh, absolutely. Republicans have for a long, long time worked to narrow the views and the trains of thoughts that we have. I want to give a shout out to my friend Shay, Faye's bestie. We love you, girl. We miss you. She has anchored here before she started flying the friendly skies, and we're so happy for you. But we lost track of each other. I think we all lost track of people over a pandemic, and we were never like super tight friends like Shay and Faye. But there's a show, Shay and Faye. I'm sending it to production. But when we all got back together finally for a somewhat socially distanced Friday evening after work, after it had probably been about a year or so, and I saw Shay for the first time since she had transitioned, and I had no idea this had been happening at all. And I just kind of was like, you look so familiar. But then, as soon as we started talking, I was like, yeah. Because people get so caught up on looks and everything. The heart is still the same.
Yeah.
The heart is still the same, no matter how fabulous your makeup may look. When yours does.
Thank you. It's a Valentine's Day special.
I appreciate that. But I've asked another trans friend, and I said, did you lose any friends after you started transitioning? And she told me no, because they weren't really my friends to begin with.
Yep, that's true.
And I found that a particularly powerful statement. Will, thank you. You were always one of my favorite interviews. You're always fantastic and upbeat and a little bit goofy, which is why I think I had some of my best interviews with you. Good on you for not only embracing your friend, learning your friend, and admitting what you don't know. That's the thing. Yeah. Will is admitting what he doesn't know.
Yeah, that's a beautiful
and making this movie.
Point.
And I'm just so very excited. And you know what? I've got friends who can get screeners. So if this thing doesn't get distribution, we're all just going to come over and have movie night at my house.
Okay.
Invite me over.
Good.
Absolutely.